Hey, what's up YouTube? Sam here from HS Media TV, and today with the last part of my HUD tutorial series. And yeah, like I promised in the last video, this time I will show you exactly how I created this kind of interface right here. So this video is more like a guided or narrated workflow instead of a full tutorial. But I still think it's helpful for you to see how I create my interfaces or to see just how I work. Before I start, I just want to mention two more things, and the first thing is that I don't know if you have already noticed it, but After Effects is now fully in English. I just switched the languages, so I will also make a tutorial about that. And the second thing is that because of changing the language, I noticed some language mistakes I made in the past. For example, especially with HUD interfaces, let me show you this, is that I translated some of these effects wrong. So for example, I called a stroke effect edge and fill surface because it is the correct translation from German, but After Effects just calls it differently. So just keep in mind that surface is really called fill and edge is really called stroke. Okay, so with that being said, I think we are ready to start. So like always, create a new composition, call it composite. Choose the settings you want and then just click OK. Then like always, first activate your save title right here and then just start by selecting your elliptic tool again. Let's zoom in a bit. So first you want to create our crosshair element, just this tiny thing right here. So for that, just zoom in a bit more and just create a nice small circle. Then hit U 2 times to open up your settings and just make your stroke invisible so that you just have your fill. Okay, then keep your layer selected and choose your pen tool and then just start to draw a nice straight line, something like that. Then hit U again 2 times, delete your fill right here and just change your stroke to something around 2, or I think 1 looks better. 1 looks good. Then again, select this layer and draw a second line from top to the bottom. The settings should be the same like before, so I think that looks good. And then again, select your elliptic tool and draw a nice circle, so something like that. But instead of the first circle, we want now to make our fill invisible and the stroke should look fine. I think 1 pixel is perfect. Okay, then hit U to close this layer and call it, for example, crosshairs or whatever you want to call it. Okay, because I want to save some time, I will now just copy these next elements, for example, these divided lines or this clock element right here, together with the text and our edged outlines from the tutorial part 2, because I don't think we have to create it again. It will just be boring and just the same like before. So just select everything and copy it so that it looks like something like that right here. And then we are ready to create our rotating our rotating HUD element. So once again, select your elliptic tool and draw a nice circle around your center. Then again, hit U 2 times, deselect your fill. And this time we want to increase our stroke settings. So let's say something around 5, I think. I think 5 looks good. Let's bring the size down to, let's say, 325. Okay, and then go to dashes and hit this plus icon. And then just mess around with your settings. I think I will make it a bit more complex, so maybe something like, maybe something like that looks good. Let's make the gap a bit bigger, or I think that looks good. Okay, and then you want to hit R for rotation. I'll click the stopwatch right here and just type in wiggle. And I think something around comma 2. It's 0.2, 270, for example. It always depends on how fast you want your animation, but if you want to know exactly how this expression works, then just watch again part 1 of my tutorial series. Okay, then you can close this layer and call it, I don't know, rotating HUD 01. And just make a short ramp preview by pressing the 0 button on your keyboard. And yeah, as you can see, this circle is now starting to animate randomly. And all you have to do now is just always duplicate this layer, increase the size of it, maybe make the stroke a bit bigger to, let's say, something around 12 or something, and just mess around with the settings again. So I think something like that looks good. And just keep repeating it until you like what you did. So maybe something like that. Let's say 5 again. Okay. Just keep in mind that adding more layers will make your HUD interface more complex and a bit more good looking. So yeah, I think for the moment that looks good. And yeah, let's go back to our original comp, and we can see that I also created some HUD elements in the background, which are a bit less transparent than the layers on top. So for that, I will just, for example, duplicate my HUD1 layer and call it, for example, rotating HUD BG for background and 01. Just like always, make sure that you name your layers correctly, because you will stay organized, because I think, as you can see right now, it's already getting crowded with layers. So yeah, just change the name so you know what layer belongs to which effect, for example. And then hit U 2 times again to change the settings. Let's make that a bit bigger to something around that, and change the size, for example, to, let's say, 25. Then hit T for opacity, and let's decrease it to something around, I think 25 looks good. Then hit U to close it, and let's just make a short ramp preview. Okay, I think that starts to look quite nice. So like I said before, you can add more layers if you want, but I think for the moment it's enough. So let's see how I went on. Okay, then I created this outline right here. It's actually very simple. Just duplicate one of your HUD layers, hit U. Then we want to alt-click our rotation because we don't need our wiggle expression. And then just erase all of these dashes settings right here. And then just bring your stroke width down to, let's say, 1. Okay, of course, make the size a bit bigger, so something like 400 looks good. Okay. And then just duplicate this layer again. Let's say to, for example, 425. Then change your stroke width to something around, 25 again. Or it's a bit too big, 15. Yeah, I think 15 looks good. Then again, hit the plus icon for your dashes. And just change the amount of dashes to 1. And now you can see it looks like a line, but you want to change the gap between these things to something around 5. Let's see if it looks good. I think at the top right here you see that this gap right here is a bit too small, so you just have to mess around with the settings. For example, I don't know. Yeah, I think something like that looks good. Of course, you should always try to make it as perfect as possible. But yeah, just to save some time, I think that looks good for this tutorial. Then close this thing right here. And again, duplicate this layer. And again, let's duplicate our layer 4. And just increase the size to something like 450. Okay, so as you can see, we're starting to get there. It looks kind of the same like my original interface right here. The next thing you may want to do is, again, create these edged outlines like you created here in the center of your circle. So once again, to save some time, I will just now scale my element right here. You should always change the size by increasing the size of your path. But yeah, like I said, I would just want to save some time, so I will now scale it up. Okay, so I think something like that looks good. Now we may want to rotate it, so hit R for rotation and just choose something like, yeah, something like that. I think that looks good. And the last thing I will show you is how you can create these kind of side elements. So again, select your thin outline right here. In this case, it's number 6. Hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. Okay. Then hit U again 2 times to open up your settings. And bring the size up to something like, let's say 485. No, 485, sorry. Okay, then go to Add and choose Trim Path. And then just trim your path all the way down to, let's say, something like, yeah, something like 80 and 87. You can, if you want, you can bring the stroke width a bit up to, let's say, 2. Okay, and then once again hit Ctrl D to duplicate this layer and scale it up to something like, let's say something like 725. And then just mess around with your trim path settings, that it starts to get a bit more of this angled shape right here. So yeah, like I said, just make it a bit bigger. So for example, 79 on this side, and I don't know, let's say 89 on the other side. Okay, then close this setting and now select your pen tool. Make sure you deselect all layers and then zoom in a bit and just try to create a line from this out point to this out point right here. Okay, and then again from this out point to this out point right here. And yeah, if you now zoom out, you have your perfect created side element as I did right here. Of course, you can now fill it with, I don't know, text layer, for example. So let's create a text and call it, I don't know, 79%, for example. Of course, change the font to something like Arial, for example. Oh, sorry. I think something like that looks good. If you want, you can also create a grid like I did here. So for that, go to right click, layer, new solid, call it grid, of course, click OK. Then go to effects and presets and type in grid. Apply this effect to your layer. By the way, if you just double click this effect right here, it will move to your selected layer. So just double click right here. Then go to your size form and change width and height sliders and change it to something like, let's say 20 and 20. And of course, bring the border down to, I think, 1. Okay, after that you want to go to blending mode and select stencil alpha. And then just choose your pen tool and draw a nice mask around your shape. Just try to be as accurate as possible. So I think something like that. Okay. Yeah, I think that looks good. Of course, now you can press M 2 times to open up your mask settings and just mess around with the mask feather and the mask expansion. So for example, bring the mask feather up to 10 pixels or 20 pixels and then bring the mask expansion down to negative 20 pixels. Or let's say negative 10, for example. And as you can see, it starts to disappear. It really gets this nice faded effect. So yeah, just change it back to, I don't know, minus 15, for example. Okay, and yeah, I think that's all you need to know. Of course, you can now create the side element, but it's basically just the same principles as in the center HUD effect. Just create your nice rotating circle using wiggle expression and then just duplicate this layer, make it bigger or smaller and just mess around with the settings, for example the dashes or yeah, whatever you want. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Like I said, that's everything I know to create my interfaces. I don't think you actually need more things to know. It's just now time to practice and to work on your own. Before we finish, I just want to show you one example I'm currently working on. So where is it? I think, yeah, HUD example. So yeah, as you can see right here, it looks very complex. It's a lot of layers, as you can see right here. And yeah, I think it was a couple of hours work. It's just, yeah, just be creative, do what you want. Like I said before, look in the internet or look on Google for images to find inspiration, especially in the beginning if you're not good enough to create something like that on your own. So yeah, just practice and practice. And I think soon you will get there and create something like that on your own. I hope you liked this tutorial series, and if you do so, it would be nice to hit the like button, share and subscribe. And yeah, like always, if you still have any questions or of course tutorial requests, don't hesitate to ask me. Yeah, like I said, next time I will do a tutorial about changing the language. So if you always wanted to change the language after you installed the program from German to English or from Spanish to English, then just watch the next tutorial. I hope I see you next time, and yeah, like always, stay creative and have fun with your HUD interfaces.